Oh, I'm recording. Hey, everybody. I'm going to talk very briefly about some elements covered in chapters 1, 2, and 4 of your book. The truth is that I would happily talk for hours and hours and hours about any one of these chapters. And if we were in a live classroom, we might spend 2 classrooms or almost 3 hours talking about any of these chapters. That'd be a lot of me talking, but also a lot of discussion and questions and trying to bat things around and come up with how people feel about things, trying to get people to talk. So I could easily make a 2-hour lecture about each chapter. My suspicion is, and my finding is, that people just would not watch all of it. And I want to keep these brief enough that you actually try to watch them. So I'm going to keep them, particularly in this case, where I'm going to try to cover several different ideas from several different chapters. I'm going to try to keep them brief. That means you have to read the chapters because I'm not going to talk about everything, and there's important things in there that you're going to have to know about and that I want you to think about. So I'm going to dive right into a few key points that I want you to remember from chapter 1, and then I'll take a quick break, divide this into 2 parts so it will actually upload, and we'll do just a couple of things from chapter 2 and 4. The first thing I want to say is that without being in the classroom with you, I haven't had much chance to talk about where I see and where I think you should think about the scope of the thing you are studying in this class is, and that is theater. This is a weird time, 2025, to be studying theater. Theater is probably the least popular and significant in the culture it has been sort of forever. In Shakespeare's day, theater was by far the most important entertainment in the whole land. Everybody who could possibly afford to go to London and go to see a play would go to a play. And theater has been enormously important in all sorts of cultures all over the world. But live professional theater or live performed theater with tickets has become less and less and less and less popular and prevalent in the culture, particularly since the advent of movies in the early 1900s and then television in the mid 20th century. And even when I was in college in the 80s, we were talking a lot about, is theater dying? Is theater going away? What's happening to theater? But that was still the time when the Tonys were on network TV and everybody watched it, even though they probably didn't go to New York to see all the plays. We live in a very different time now, and COVID in particular gave theater another big hit in terms of audience sizes, in terms of budgets, in terms of a lot of theaters, professional theaters actually closing their doors and not coming back. They just couldn't come back, which we'll talk about a little bit more later, how actually theater makes their money and operate. Theaters make their money and operate. Because of that, it's a little weird that we have a theater department at every single college and that we spend so much time studying theater when very, very few people are going to go into it as a career. Some of you might, and I'm so excited for you and for the exciting lives you have ahead of you. But very few people are going to go into it as a career, and as we know from looking like at the discussion board, most of you don't even go to see plays. It's not a very common thing to do. That's not your fault. It's a condition of the society. So why do we study it at all? Well, it still is a multi-million-dollar business. It still is a thing that lots and lots and lots of people do in the world, even though there are less and less and less successful commercial professional theaters. Broadway in New York has come back a little bit. There are still theaters all over the country. And more importantly, there's non-professional theater, community theater, educational theater going on all the time. Probably the place where the most theater happens is with little kids in classes. My wife is constantly in demand to teach kids theater classes. She is working all the time teaching little kids. People love to have their kids involved in theater. So theater is this paradox, quite frankly. It's still a very common thing in our culture. It's still a big business, but it is much smaller than a lot of other things that we might or might not discuss, like movies, like TV, obviously like where a lot of you spend a lot of your time, the internet, TikTok, YouTube, wherever, like professional sports. Theater is not even in the realm of those things in terms of dollars spent, in terms of human beings who pay attention to them and care about them. The most important reason to study theater is probably that theater is the place where all those other things come from. There are no movies or television without the theater. Early movies and television were basically just theater plays put onto the screen. But still, we very much do the same things that the theatrical historical tradition do in movies and TV. And theater shows us a way, because it has a long history, unlike those other things, of how things develop, how things change, and what things mean in a society. So we are going to study theater, and we're going to care about theater in this class. And I care deeply about theater. It is my job, it is my career, it is my life. But I don't want you to think that I'm insane and don't know, oh yeah, most of you don't go to theater. Most of the world and the country doesn't go to theater very often. And that has to be considered every time we talk about theater as a force in society or an important thing or a history-making thing, that's where we sit in terms of our culture and our history today. So that's point number one, that I want you to remember, that we are kind of aware of theater's position in the culture, position in the world, people's attentions. People's attentions now are, as you probably know, movie theaters are struggling, network television is struggling, everything has gone to kind of a short video, short clip, attention phone economy, in ways that are both interesting and troubling. But that's kind of another discussion. I also wanted to talk about, in your chapter 1 that you read, some of you had questions or thoughts about the professional or amateur theater, and also the nonprofit and profit nature of theater. Basically, professional theater is just theater where people get paid, where sort of everybody gets paid. The play you see at Cosumnes River College, the students don't get paid to be in the play. The actors don't get paid to be in the play. But the director does, who's a faculty member possibly, or a faculty member from some other school. The designers do. Some people do get paid. In community theater, some people get paid. Not very many, but some people. In little kids theater, the teacher's getting paid. But professional theater is where the actors and the crew members and the people in the booth and the people in the lobby taking tickets are all getting paid. Where it is like when you go to a restaurant, everybody's there is getting paid. When you go to a theater where everybody's getting paid, that is a professional theater. And amateur is also of other things. Amateur does not mean bad. Lots of great community theaters. Lots of colleges and universities in this country produce high quality theater. Colleges and universities have big advantages in terms of they don't have to pay the actors, so you can have a cast of 40 if you want in your play. Almost no professional theater can ever afford to have a cast of 40 in a play, except for in like a Broadway musical, and even they don't do it much anymore, because you're paying all those people and you just can't afford it. You're losing money all the time, hand over fist. So that's professional and amateur. And then nonprofit and profit. It's important to understand that almost all theater in the United States is nonprofit. The only real profit-based theaters in the country where they are putting out money in an attempt to make back a profit is Broadway, the 40 or so theaters on Broadway that are a specific size and a specific location in New York, and some tours that come out of Broadway shows. Everything else is nonprofit. The biggest, best theater in San Francisco, the biggest, best theater in Houston, the biggest, best theaters in Chicago, all are nonprofit, all have a tax exempt status based on their nonprofit status. That doesn't mean they don't try to make as much money as they can. That doesn't mean they don't want to sell as many tickets as they can. It doesn't mean they don't pay their employees. They do pay their employees, but they also have nonprofit tax status, and they rely on donations and corporate sponsorships and things like that to actually make their money. You basically cannot make enough money doing theater to pay for theater unless it runs for like over a year. And the only place that does that is Broadway. So that's profit and nonprofit. That's a key point that I want you to remember. Amateur, professional, profit, nonprofit. And it's theater's still a big deal. It happens all around us. It happened at your high school. It happens. There's hundreds of groups doing theater in the Sacramento area. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. Now only, I just made myself super sad. There's only really 3 fully professional theaters now operating in Sacramento. There were 5 back when I ran one of them. They went out of business in 2009. Then there were 4 for a long time. There's now only 4. But there's all sorts of other theaters that are semi-professional or fully amateur or whatever doing theater, and all sorts of schools and all sorts of kids groups and all sorts of things happening around us. Another point that I just want to make sure you paid careful attention to in the chapter 1 is the liveness of theater, and the fact that they say in your chapter what you need for theater to happen is an audience, an actor, and telling a story. I was taught and learned that what you needed was an audience, an actor, and a space. That in fact the story, how do you really define a story if you don't have a story but instead have a series of actions, or it's a mime, or it's an improv, or it's just a bunch of action scenes of just like a sword fighting demonstration? Is that theatrical? That's an interesting thing we could debate. But the primary thing to remember is liveness with an audience specifically there to observe and take in something, and actors or actor, a person or persons doing things that are being viewed. That's really what you need for theater to happen. Now, most theater that we think of has a lot of other stuff: costumes, a stage, a script, an intermission, a curtain speech, all sorts of stuff that we associate with theater and that many, many plays have. But the essence of theater is the human being in front of other human beings and that interaction and liveness between them. That's a key thing to remember. And at the end of chapter 1, I just wanted a lot of people note the superstitions, which they end chapter 1 with. This book is pretty good at putting fun things in the various chapters, along with the stuff that they want people to focus on. And the superstitions are kind of a fun thing. A lot of people notice them. I will just say, all those superstitions that are in your book, people in the theater actually do talk about those things all the time. I've encountered all of those. Almost every theater I've ever worked in, someone has stories about the ghost. People do not say the name of the Scottish play, Macbeth, inside a theater. As you might notice, I'm even hesitant to say it in my house, where it's not even supposed to be bad luck. People do say break a leg. All the things that are in there are things that actually happen. But I will also say that most people kind of realize it's a little bit of a joke. It's a little bit of a fun thing. It's a little bit of a tradition that kind of binds us together. I really don't know very many people who take those things very seriously. And the few people I have known who've genuinely worried about someone saying Macbeth and made them go outside and turn around twice and throw salt over their shoulder are looked on as a little bit strange. But the superstitions definitely exist, and I don't say Macbeth when I'm in a theater, even though I don't believe in a curse or believe in bad luck being caused by saying a word. But it's a tradition we have, and I don't want to offend anybody else, and I don't want anybody else to freak out, so I just don't do it, and I've gotten used to it. Okay, I'm going to break this right here and then talk a little bit about some key points I want you to remember from the other chapters.